All right, so on the topic of play, I spent my childhood in my bedroom playing with Lego, having lots of fun, by myself all the time.
You spent your adult time in your bedroom as well?
Well, no, now I have a lab, so it's much better now. So I have a lab I play in. A couple years ago, I got my amateur radio license, and it's been a lot of fun learning a lot about the hobby. And if you're interested, these are a couple amateur radios. This allows me to talk locally through local repeaters, and also I have a radio at home that lets me talk around the world. One of the things everybody that's into amateur radio loves is weather. And a couple years ago, they started producing what's called a software-defined radio. This is a USB dongle you plug an antenna into, and you can tell it what to listen to, and there's all kinds of open source software that can decode it. And one of the things these can pick up is the weather sensors. Now this is a cheap Chinese knockoff. You probably have one at home, an Accurite or a Lacrosse, temperature and humidity. It'll have a little display. You put one half outside, one half inside. I figured out you can use these to capture that data, decode it, and store it. So I started on a project to grab this data, store the weather data so that I can track it at my house, wind speed, wind direction, temperature, humidity. And I used Raspberry Pis. I don't know if any of you are familiar with them. It's this tiny top circuit board here, and it's a tiny little computer. This is a quad core with a gig of RAM, so much better than a Commodore 64 that we grew up playing with. And what I've done is developed an interface board that lets this computer talk to the radio. So this whole package can receive the weather sensors through here, record it in the database on here, and then take that information, translate it into, do you remember the old modem sounds? Like, yeah? That's what we still send over radios today. And so it can then use this interface board to convert it into a sound file that it sends to a radio, and it can be a little tiny radio like this, and it broadcasts it over the radio waves. This means other people with a similar system can receive it all over the local area, and then it can be repeated through the different systems through multiple, to farther distances. I've then developed a dashboard which runs on an old iPad 1. So this allows us to use all the old hardware we've got kicking around in our basements that isn't doing anything that we go, what are we going to do with this now? I now have one of these that sits in my living room, and it's displaying live weather data from around my house. I'm also working on a way to synchronize this, so all the data will go online, so you can then synchronize between two of these systems, so you can have two Raspberry Pis in your house. That way if one dies, you have a redundancy, you get a new one, and you resync it all back. And that's what I've been doing for the last year. I've been having a lot of fun with it, and I've now produced a case and a full kit, and I'm actually selling it to amateur radio operators as an electronics kit you can put together and record this stuff and play with it in your house. The next steps are actually going to be getting it into emergency services. The fire department in Barrie is interested because this is a system they can have in place running 24/7 with no internet connection, which means when a tornado hits Barrie and all the cell towers are taken out and nobody has a cell phone working anymore, the fire chief will still know what the wind direction is at the south end of Barrie, and should a fire break out, he knows where he has to evacuate. So this is not only something you can play with at home, but also something that's good for disaster scenarios and emergency services. Yes?
Have you considered the application for climate-controlled farming?
I've considered a lot of applications. It really comes down to time. This is a possibility to do a lot of different systems through time. One of the other things you can record through these with a special satellite dish is the geostationary satellite weather satellites, and you can get full disk images, the full half of the Earth, and all the cloud patterns going on in high resolution. So we can also track airplane data with the airplane transponders through it as well too. So there's a lot of applications that could come into a package like this. So for farming, you can actually also put this with a GPS and have it beacon the tractor's location. So you could use this to keep track of all your tractors and where they are on your property, who's operating them. You could then integrate it with weather and mapping and see systems coming in and historical trends and compare it to previous years if you want. Yep.
Sort of two questions. One is, are you are you allowed to have all this air traffic data?
Yes.
That's open source?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
The second was more, have recent experience with projects growing inside of shipping containers.
Yep.
So aeroponics and stuff like that.
Microgreens.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I was inquiring a lot about the software and like why are we using this particular software? So it sounds like you already have something superior, which is kind of
If you like tinkering, this would be superior. If you want an off-the-product shelf that just plug and play, this is not the answer for you. That being said, one of the things I want to include in this in the future is hygrometer sensors. So you can test your soil moisture. And you can have it all recorded and graphed. So you can do historical graphs. It's all normalized to 1 minute. So you have 1 minute increments for all your data. So there's thousands of different sensors you can get. And it's a matter of then just writing the code to throw them into the database. But the software I've developed is a platform that can be extended. So anybody could write new modules. The entire software is open source and the hardware is open source. So you can actually download the hardware plans, modify it, print your own circuit boards. This is the circuit board. I designed this. I've never designed circuit boards before. This is the 4th one I've done this year, and I send to China for printing. I ordered 150 of these, and they're less than $2 each, including shipping and import duties. So designing and doing this stuff is very, very cheap these days. Any other questions?
What kind of open source software do you use for?
So what it is a PHP. The whole code base is PHP, so it runs on a standard LAMP stack using MySQL or MariaDB. And the interface is all JavaScript, HTML5. And the dashboard is specifically SVG graphics. So it will run on the old iPad 1s and old tablets.
Is it D3 or?
Sorry?
Did you do it by D3 or?
No, I just wrote it all myself. There's no libraries or anything. I built the entire thing from the ground up. The foundation software was what I originally built, which was small business management. And it's a fully multi-tenant platform that lets you do websites, blogging, products, sales, accounting, you name it. I can go on for an hour. And then I layered on a secondary package that's all the ham tools, the amateur radio tools. And so I'm planning to extend it over time to get all kinds of new features. And because it's open source, I'm really hoping other people will start contributing to it through time. And we're actually going to be leaving this system here. We're going to get the dashboard running on the TV, and you'll actually have this system running in the cafe so you can monitor the local weather. Yeah. Thank you. What's that? Right now, it'll only be this building. I haven't put a radio with this because due to amateur radio rules, it's very sticky about you have to be within proximity, and I'd have to put my license on it. And should anybody mess with it, I can lose my amateur radio license, which I really don't want to do. So eventually, I will be putting something that's a receive-only radio, so that if I can get other amateurs in the area beaconing this information, you'll be able to get other weather data. I've also hooked it so it'll send it to Weather Underground too. So we'll get Creator Cafe set up on Weather Underground, and you'll actually be a weather node there. For those of you that don't know, Weather Underground is a free weather service. Yeah. Any other questions?
How long did it take you to grow that beard?
To grow? I've been working on it for a couple years. I have to keep getting it trimmed. People complain it gets too bushy, but you know, I'm just practicing for December 25th. And plus, it's one of those things, everybody remembers me now, so it's great that way. Any other questions? I tried to keep it short and brief and not get too deep on anything.
Sounds good.
Great, thank you very much.